Hello, everyone, and welcome to a CRO Cafe session here at Digital Elite Day. I'm joined by Abi and Craig. Thank you so much for joining me. And the topic we're talking about is self-development for CROs and how to become a better CRO. And hopefully, we assume you want to be better at what you do anyway, because that's kind of a trait of CROs that we want to make things better. So why not? Why stop at the websites or the customer journeys and let's continue this and try to improve ourselves as well. We have over 100 people joining this session. Welcome everyone. If you have any questions, you can use the chat here in Zoom to ask them, and I'll see if I can put them in front of Craig or Abby. So the first question for Craig and Abby, we all have different backgrounds and skill sets. Everyone in CRO has, because it's going to be really hard to find someone that has studied CRO in college. So there's no single CRO professional role. There's not a single defined role there. So what overall advice can we give our listeners to get started with CRO and improving their skills? Who wants to go first?
Let's hand it over to Mr. Sullivan, I think.
You can give that one to me. We did chat about this, Abby and I, and there's both broadening and deepening your skill set. So it's a fairly common trait to say that really good CRO people are what we call T-shaped, in that they have some tremendously fantastic specialisms, stuff that they're really superb at, but they're also good or very good at a lot of other things. And it's this combination of disciplines and perspectives onto designing and improving and experimenting with products that actually fills in a lot of the sort of gaps in your knowledge. So in order to do this work really well, I think it's fairly well accepted that you need skills in multiple disciplines. You don't necessarily need to be an expert in all those disciplines. So there are many different types of CRO people who specialize in different areas, but broadly it's about getting wider knowledge, but also deepening that knowledge in the areas that you really enjoy. And people end up specializing not in what they think is the best, but they tend to specialize in things that A, they're good at, B, they're quite hard to master. So there's a challenge involved there, and basically, so there are some incentives there for them to then kind of study that thing more deeply. And the third thing is that they actually enjoy doing it. It's no fun doing a CRO discipline or specialism if you don't actually enjoy that area of work. So you have to experience a lot of areas of work to learn, but you also have to experience lots of areas of work to find out what you're really passionate about.
Yeah, because if you don't have the passion for the topic, then you're not going to do your best at it. And I think finding one thing or a couple of things that you really enjoy doing, then that kind of shines through in the work that you're outputting as well. So it's really important to find those things that float your boat, so to speak, I think.
Yeah. So hopefully you already have this passion.
Yeah.
That's going to be hard. There's no course to develop the passion, I think. But when we prepped for this session, we did came up with a list of at least some inherent traits that we think people should have, and we see in most CRO people. And these inherent traits are things like bravery, passion, creativity, a determination, humility, curiosity, and to be sociable. And this is all in addition to the soft and hard skills that you probably can learn. I think the most important ones that we defined in terms of hard skills were experiment design, analytics, psychology, and qualitative research. In addition, of course, there are a lot of skills, like you just said, Craig. There's a T shape here, so there can be a lot of skills that you combine here, like copywriting, data visualization. Most of us have some basic understanding of HTML, CSS, how browsers work. And then there's the soft skills of communication, presentation, storytelling, being user-centered, caring about what users think and how they experience things.
You see, and there are all these people think there's maybe a prescribed pathway, but there isn't. And some of the best CRO people I've met have cross-trained from other disciplines. They've been great at UX and they've got into experiments, or they've been a really good visual designer, but they got into analytics, right? But the things that these multiple disciplines do is now you can start to understand why people can or can't use products, but then you can actually begin to measure the impact of that knowledge. So it's this capability to triangulate problems by having a wide range of skill sets allows you to use more toolkits and inspect the problem from different angles. And it's those angles and that perspective that make you better than somebody who's just a single discipline sort of practitioner.
Yeah. And so can you tell us a bit, maybe Abby, to start with you, what are the latest skills that you tried to develop?
You want me to be brutally honest? the latest skills I developed was how to homeschool a 9-year-old during the pandemic.
Zero, yeah.
But actually, I say that jokingly, but in order to teach a 9-year-old, 6 months worth of schoolwork, I had to do a lot of improvement in myself. For example, I had to figure out how to story tell really well, because there's no point in just sitting in front of a 9-year-old and saying, well, we're going to do this today. So I had to sell it into him. So that improved my skill set. I had to learn how to make the most out of minimal materials. Everybody's panic buyed. So the stuff that I needed to homeschool him, it wasn't available. So making the most out of, a limited budget or limited resources all helps to go towards optimizing. And it sounds really odd, but it was probably the worst 6 months of my entire life. I'm very glad he's now back at school. But
you needed a lot of creativity, you need a lot of bravery, determination.
Yeah, and how to sell into probably the hardest stakeholder you'll ever have to deal with, right? So this is a very strange year, I'm sure, for a lot of people. And I wouldn't have thought I'd be saying, well, this is what I took away and this is what I've been learning over the past 6 months. But honestly, it's opened my eyes. And the thing that I took away from it is you can improve being a CRO, not necessarily because you're sat down doing all the things that people are telling you to do, but from an outside influence and a situation that you were put in. You can always learn to optimize that in some way. And it's having that mindset to be able to flip a situation so that it works for you that I think really adds to making a good CRO. I don't know what you think, Craig. But
what's the latest skill you developed, Craig?
Well, I had to, a couple of things with lockdown again. I ended up running a plant project where I had to basically grow and deliver or leave for pickup plants for 659 plants to people in the local area who couldn't get them at garden centres during lockdown or they were isolated. So I had to learn how to, forecast exactly how much yield I was going to get out of the plants that I would grow so I would have enough stock to satisfy the demand. So I ended up having to learn all about sort of like forecasting and stock planning and sowing stuff at the right time. So I had to learn how to run like a miniature garden centre or a nursery. And through that work, I also got involved with a lot of local businesses in lockdown who had no IT skills at all and suddenly had to set up websites and get stuff running on platforms like Shopify. So I helped a few of them, and that was completely outside of my comfort zone. They don't have big budgets and big companies and shiny offices, and you're kind of working on a shoestring that has to be ready today. So yeah, those were another couple of great lockdown skills.
Yeah. So a lot of opportunity in a global pandemic, right? So we just mentioned a big list of skills that you need to have, or that you could at least try to develop, and so then you need to have some sense of okay, where to start, what to pick, and you need to have the motivation and ability to do so. So could you guys give us some of your favorite picks or approaches to learning new subjects and how to develop this growth mentality?
I think it's a realization that we work in such a fluid and dynamic environment that knowledge that you say is current right now, if you were to freeze my knowledge right now, within 3 months, it'd start to get out of date. Within a year, it would be horrendously out of date. So standing still or having the same pile of knowledge after a period of time just isn't an option. It's changing too much. And we must also learn to do things in new ways, to automate things, to use machine learning tools as our friends in solving problems. Will be one of the challenges that we have in future. But I think there must be a realization that you cannot be an expert in all of this, and your knowledge can only be augmented as well as the network of people that you know, right? So my best piece of knowledge right now is not loads of cool stuff that help conversion. It's knowing what I know and what other people know that I don't know, right? Because I can go and ask them. So if you ask me a question I know precisely, no, I have no idea, but I know a guy who does. And that piece of knowledge is infinitely more valuable than either trying to cram everything into my head, which is impossible, or become an expert in all those areas. So knowing the extent and boundary of your own knowledge is perhaps the wisest piece of knowledge of all, because then you're not stepping outside that. You know that you can leave your ego at the door and ask for help and say, do you know what? I have no idea what to do here. I'll go and ask so and so, and they will have an answer. So that's really important. The network of friends and compadres and people in CRO that you make will determine a lot of your success, I would say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And for me, it's definitely networking and meetups that provide the biggest benefit for me, because I can't be on social media 24 hours a day or reading the latest podcast. You'd burn out quicker than you can blink, right? So, but by going to meetups and just speaking to other people in the industry, it gives you the opportunity for them to say something like, oh, did you hear about X, Y, and Z? And you're like, oh, no, I didn't hear about that, but I'm going to go and find out about it. So it's kind of like a filter that allows you to learn new techniques and theories that are coming through and what everybody else is doing. So that's a great way of doing it. And also, you can speak to people about what's not gone right for them. You're not just hearing all the glory stories about how wonderfully somebody's done. You're hearing the nuts and bolts about how things didn't go so well and how they fixed the problem. And you can be aware of things to look out for yourself. So for me,
go ahead. There's all the usual things to mention, obviously, like reading, books, blogs. There's a lot of really great stuff on Medium. A lot of the engineering and experimentation teams at very big companies publish blogs on Medium. There's on-the-job practice, but if you're already working in this industry, try and work with other CRO people or other companies, because you learn. You think, oh, that's quite good. I'll have to put that into my stuff. So it's great. It's what the internets are for, and other people. It's for stealing all our best ideas, right? But it's how you approach this in a meta way. You can look at everything everybody's doing and then try and actually pull out the things that really help you in your specific area of work. There isn't one answer. There's only you, a problem, and a set of tools to inspect that problem. That's all there always is, right? And every problem is unique. But I would also say going and speaking and getting over your fear. I'm always terrified of speaking like 5 minutes before. I'm just like a wreck, I'm shaking, right? But it's fine. I get up and everybody thinks, oh, that looks dead easy and he's calm and everything. No, I'm not, right? It's quite nerve-wracking. And for those of you who haven't considered, because you think it's nerve-wracking, well everybody else has nerves, so you're no different. So take the plunge, go to some meetups, create some material, watch some other talks, make your own stuff, and then you can kind of practice and go on the circuit, because becoming a speaker was one of the best things that I did, because when I started giving away my knowledge, I got so much back. The more I gave away, the more people gave me in return. And that's a good lesson for all CROs. If you hold on to your knowledge tightly, well, it'll just atrophy and wither, right? Whereas if you give away your knowledge freely, then you'll establish a huge network of people who will make your knowledge pool even bigger.
Yeah. And some people now might ask, okay, but maybe I want to speak, but I don't know how to start or where to go. Abi, maybe you're a great example in this. Your first public session was at CXL Live. So how did that happen?
Well, it was, I think somebody called Craig Sullivan may have just suggested I did it.
Just do it, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd never done any public speaking at all, ever. And I'll be honest with you, the idea of a trip over to the States sounded like a really cool idea at the time. But I was absolutely petrified. And, you know, CXL Live, massive conference within the industry. And I just said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. But I'd never done any public speaking. I was absolutely, I'm not going to say it, but I was very, very nervous. But I got over there on the flight and it was all fine. But for the 2 days running up to my speaking slot, I basically wanted to come home. I was so scared. But what I did get away from that was the support of all the other speakers and the conference organisers, who were absolutely amazing, giving me a leg up and a confidence boost. And it's like, yeah, you can do it. It's great, you know. And I did. I got up on that stage and I did my 15-minute talk. And for the entire time, I thought my tongue was going to drop out of my head and I didn't know what I was going to say. And I couldn't speak properly because I didn't have any water. But the talk went really, really well. And I got a few laughs out of it, which is what I wanted to achieve. And I also got to highlight my passion, which is quality assurance and making sure stuff works right before we roll it out, and how important that was, along with checking websites for errors before you even start optimizing them, and how much money you can make from that before you begin an A/B testing program. And it's not something that I regret doing now. I was very grateful for the opportunity, and that I had somebody pushing me to go and do it, even though it was so far out of my comfort zone. I'd have never contemplated doing it before.
We want to encourage people to go and try and do this. You'll be surprised if you do a talk, if you get a video, you write to a conference organizer and say, look, I've got this really important thing to say. Here's some details about me. Here's maybe a video of a talk I've done before, even if it's one you've recorded at home. That's fine. You'll be really surprised that they will be open to sharing your idea, and you won't find out unless you actually try. And to get over the nervousness of public speaking, almost every city and every town in the world has an organization called Toastmasters or something similar. And these people's job are to teach you how to, do a speech at a wedding or something like that. And honestly, these guys will coach a really good talk out of you in a few weeks' time. So there's a top tip. If you want to learn how to kind of get over that thing of public speaking, do your first thing or become even better, go to Toastmasters and get them to help you.
And my two top tips would be storytelling. It makes it so much easier when you're doing a presentation. And the second top tip would be, don't be afraid to, take the piss out of yourself, for want of a better word. Because adding humor into it makes it human, if definitely that makes any sense.
Yeah, we also got a comment from Annemarie Klaassen telling that Craig pushed her to talk at Super Week. But
audience there.
But before everyone starts contacting Craig for talks, you can just go to Toastmasters or go to meetup.com. There's a lot of local meetups on there on any kind of topic.
Measure Camp had a whole session last time. We had a physical meetup that was all about on how we could encourage greater diversity in the speakers that we see at conferences. And that was fascinating. And there's a lot of things that we can all do if we build alliances to make that better.
We also got a question from Elisa. She asks on the topic of speaking engagements. What if you feel you have nothing new to say in a talk?
I think if you're curious and interested, and you pique that curiosity by exposing yourself to lots of other things that people are saying. I go along and watch talks on stuff that's way beyond my skill level. I'm like, and people ask me, "Why are you watching that stuff on predictive modeling using Markov chains for?" I'm like, wow, it's really hard, but like it makes my stuff feel rubbish, right? And so by exposing yourself to lots and lots of talks and interesting things that people are talking about, believe me, it will give you ideas for your talk, because at some point when they're talking, you'll think, wait a minute, that isn't right. And then someone will say to you, well, you have to get up and say it, matey. So, so it's kind of a way of tricking yourself into finding enough material so that you do have something to say.
That there is always something to talk about.
Yeah, and my way of thinking about this is also that, especially when you go to a conference where there's multiple tracks, you just announce the topic and then people show up because they want to know more about this topic. Otherwise, they wouldn't come. There's
a whole coaching camp that runs in the US that my friend Michael Ogard works with. We'll try and publish the link to that. And they help with coaching a lot of up and coming female speakers. There's lots of initiatives like that going on where people are trying to help, increase the amount of interesting stuff that we're seeing. And it's working. It's working already. Long way to go, but getting better. But yeah, please, if you have something to say, or you can develop something to say, please say it. The world wants to hear it.
Yeah.
Back on the topic of the skills you need to develop. So there's a lot of skills. We just mentioned a lot of them, a lot of ways of improving yourself. Speaking engagements will be one of them. But say you come in a situation that you really want to know more about a specific skill. Maybe it's not Markov change, but maybe machine learning, or you see something fancy from a fellow CRO practitioner and you want to dive in yourself. How do you generally approach learning more about that? Would it be, do you start reading courses, doing blogs, or do you start doing speaker engagements? Where would you start? How would you approach this?
Books and courses. CXL has some wonderful stuff, and I have a course on there, disclaimer, but there's a whole range of stuff, statistics. Every single angle of experimentation is probably covered in the material, so they're a very specialist one. There's also some very good general training sites as well that offer stuff. Copy Hackers do some free copywriting training on their website, which is really cool, and I highly recommend Momoko Price's copywriting course on CXL. It's very, very good, and lots of other people think so. But books, I've ordered myself a whole load of machine learning books and Python stuff recently, and I'm sort of plowing through them, and it's mightily confusing and very hard, but I'm learning some stuff. I was doing some testing for a site, so I just ordered myself tons and tons of machine learning books, and they're sort of sitting there in a pile nagging me to read them, right? So I've started reading 3 of them. It's tough going. It's like chewing on old dry cardboard or something. But you kind of you've got to make time and force yourself to carve out time in your life for some development, because otherwise your skills are going to atrophy. You've got to have a certain percentage set aside.
Abby, I have a question for you from the chat from Tim Stewart. Of course, Tim being Tim, it's not a single line question, but
how long have we got?
Tim talks about, people underestimate the non-CRO skill part of being a CRO. So Abby, how much would you say, how important is that? How much time do you spend developing the non-traditional CRO skills? So we spoke about experimentation design, psychology, analytics, and qualitative research. Let's call that the hard skills. How much should we focus on the soft skills?
I think they're equally as important as the other skills, to be fair to you. The issue that I see is we're selling in a complicated industry to any new business, right? Some client who's never heard of CRO before, you have to be able to sell in the process, what the aims are. It's not just A/B testing, it's a whole plethora of other elements that we're looking to optimize. So for me, having the ability to explain that clearly and how the process is run and what the results are of what we've done, and breaking down silos, So communication to me is actually one of the biggest skill sets that you can work on in terms of a soft skill. And just realizing that the people that you're dealing with, they are people as well. They have problems, they've got stresses, and the better that you can speak to a client just on the same level. It's like we're all trying to achieve the same thing. So having that awareness that the people that you're dealing with, they've got their own problems and pressures, and being able to relate on that basic human level to try and get to a point where you're all trying to get to, is one of the most important skills that I think as a CRO you can have. Nobody's out to prove somebody else is better than the other person, or, my test did better than yours and your test was a fail and all this kind of thing. We're all just trying to get to one place, right? So if we can communicate together rather than having a competition about everything or trying to prove a point.
There's a simple philosophical way of thinking about this as well. We expend all this energy and time and data and research trying to understand the visitors to this client's website, right? Why aren't we using our CRO skills to understand the client and their business, right? And this is the mistake. This is the big air gap that the relationship kind of falls into. Common mistakes are where you just deal with one person in the company, but you've never met anyone else or the rest of the teams or any of the stakeholders. They're just sort of invisible people behind this one contact. Are you really getting under the skin of the business? Do you know how they work, how they tick? I mean, we have a massive kickoff checklist of 150 sort of questions that we try and ask in the first couple of weeks of the client and try and get answers to, because we realize if we don't understand those, then all the soft skills that we apply to it are based on the wrong foundation. So using your CRO skills to understand the client is just as important as the visitors to the website, and you have the skills there to figure that one out too if you're doing the job.
So empathy is the word I would use, not only for the users on the website, but for the people that you're dealing on the other side of the wall as well. I think
my 3-point plan is shut the fuck up, ask really good questions, listen, repeat, right? That's it. And I remember there used to be a TV series in the UK where they had this guy who was a business troubleshooter, and he would go in and just ask people loads of annoying questions about the business and the stock and the lead times and cash flow and everything else. But at the end of it, you would be able to work out, you've got a problem here. You're carrying too much stock. If you cut it by this and get this warehouse here, then you'll take, you'll get an extra £1 million of revenue every year, right? And I always used to love those kind of programs because it's questioning and listening that gets under the skin and gets you the information that you need to then figure out what it is you're optimizing. It's a business you're optimizing, not a website. So understand the business, not just the website.
Yeah. Final question for both of you, and I need a really short answer because we're almost out of time. So who or what has taught you the most useful things in CRO?
Oh, okay. Mine will be quick. So people, humans, any kind of human you can think of, because my view is that if you observe people using a product, you're going to know how they use it, what problems they've got with it, and how they interact with stuff in the real world. And it's only by observing people in their natural habitat, if you want to put it that way, that you can figure out how you need to solve their problem. So for me, it is the users, the end user at the end of the day. Yeah, they're the biggest influence on me, because it never surprises me. In fact, I'm always surprised on a daily basis about how the general population use something or interact with something, and it always raises an eyebrow because I learn something new every day, and I think, how on earth did they even think about using that in that way? And
that happens a lot.
And it's massively affected my approach to what I do with regard to QA, and it's why I'm quite good at it, because their mindset is now instilled on my mindset. So that's why I generally get a really high hit rate on, failing A/B tests and things, because I'm thinking like, standard user rather than CRO person. So
it's an ego thing. If you do enough experimentation, my thing that I learned was 18 months moderating user tests in the lab, often of my own stuff. I used to get angry, like they were being critical of my work. And once I got over that, I realized it's not about me, right? It's about the user interface and them, right? I'm there as an observer. I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with what I designed. And that realization eventually is, you cannot be a perfect designer. Such a thing doesn't exist. There are only users, your design, and validating that it works. And then you try and plug that gap. It took me 18 months to learn it, but it's a really important lesson. It's not about you or your personal feelings or your colleagues' opinions or what your boss thinks. It's about the users and the product and the behavioral change. And that is all. Amen.
If you have any questions left for Craig or Abi, the Zoom chat will probably close if we end the session, but we can probably continue on Twitter. There's the hashtag DigitalElite20, and we have Abi at WTF_UX or at Optimize or Die for Craig. Craig has a free auditing checklist for Google Analytics coming out in 2-3 weeks, in the works for the past 5 years. Gonna fix all our problems. And we have, of course, we have an upcoming CRO Cafe podcast session with Abi. We're still discussing the topic, but it might be something inspired by the Netflix series on how everyone's tracking everyone, or maybe some top reasons for QA fails. We'll see what happens.
Either or, maybe we do 2.
Maybe we do 2 or 3. And if you want to not want to miss those, CRO.cafe/subscribe. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, Abi. Thanks, Craig. And I hope you enjoyed it. And see you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Next time.
Great day.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.